This is one of Ubisoft's most controversial games ever. On paper, an open-world Star Wars game with a non-Jedi protagonist and lots of familiar locations to visit sounds perfect, but the execution left a lot to be desired. Forced stealth, broken AI, frustrating bugs, and many more gameplay limits truly prevented Outlaws from shining. But Ubisoft didn't walk away from this game. They heard the criticism, released multiple patches, and addressed some of its most glaring issues. But is Star Wars Outlaws finally worth playing? And more importantly, what does it get right and what's still wrong after all the updates? One of Outlaw's biggest issues, and the one that turned many players off, was its forced stealth segments. If you're unfamiliar, these sections were designed so that any mistake meant instant failure. Get spotted and you would hit a game over screen and be kicked back to the last checkpoint, which was usually far behind. That meant wasting minutes of your precious time redoing the entire sequence only to fail again because of the game's unreliable AI. Both of these issues are mostly addressed. Firstly, once you fail stealth, instead of going back to a checkpoint, you just have to fight the enemies, with a possible damage to your reputation, which we will talk about in a bit. And only in a few instances that are also very hard to trigger, you might accidentally fail a stealth segment of a mission, but even then the punishment isn't nearly as harsh as it used to be. Secondly, after all the updates, the enemy AI is a bit more consistent. Of course, there's still nothing extraordinary since it's super easy to fool them or do stealth in general, but at least they're no longer annoying with unpredictable moves and random behavior. But the real problem that still persists is the stealth mechanic itself. It's bare bones simple and totally flavorless. Knocking guards in the head while they're wearing full armor sets can be a bit hilarious at first, but doing it for the rest of the game with barely any animation variety and almost no challenge gets old pretty fast. Using Nyx to distract enemies and taking them out with Kay adds a bit of variety, but most of the time you're stuck doing the same basic stuff. Sure, you can make stealth slightly more tactical by scouting and planning your route, and to be fair, the level design is genuinely interesting, but this is a Ubisoft game, the same company behind Ghost Recon, Splinter Cell and Assassin's Creed, and while those series were made by different teams, it still feels odd to have such a basic and arguably outdated stealth system in a modern title. Outlaws also features some platforming sections in the same vein as Jedi Survivor, Tomb Raider and Uncharted, and while there's no parkour mechanics similar to Assassin's Creed, the platforming itself feels extremely sticky, very limited, super easy and on a few occasions really inconsistent, which doesn't make sense due to its restrictive nature. There can be instances where Kay just refuses to grab ledges despite pointing the camera at them, causing her to fall or worse, causing a death that could force a reload from the checkpoint. Now, these parts are aimed to present a platforming challenge and to add variety, a nice change from all the stealth and shooting, but the problem is they are hardly challenging. The puzzles they present are fairly easy and super quick to figure out, and act more as an unrailed sequence to add basic level variety and a bit of verticality to each level. Overall, the idea is good and the level design is genuinely fine, but the execution could have been a lot better. But Outlaw's combat system is arguably one of its most underwhelming parts. The gunplay feels extremely outdated and stiff. It kind of feels like the old 7th generation games and not the good ones like Gears of War either, but more like the Mercenaries and Just Cause series. Speaking of Gears of War, something that Outlaws has borrowed from that game is its active reload mechanic that adds a nice challenge to the combat. However, as much as these mechanics look cool, the fact that Kay is limited to only one weapon throughout the whole game can't do much for the combat system. Even though you can upgrade her blaster and add different firing modes to it, you can't own different weapon types permanently, and you can only carry them for a short while when you find them in a restricted area. Although something that Ubisoft did finally fix with the updates was how you can interact with these temporary weapons. You see, before the updates, Kay would easily let go of these weapons and switch back to her blaster. Now imagine how annoying it would be if climbing a ladder, performing a melee takedown, or basically any other interaction made Kay drop her weapon every time. This is now mostly fixed and you can keep the weapons for a longer period. Regardless, not having more permanent options makes combat feel extremely restricted and repetitive. Another odd design choice is the lack of an ability to shoot while driving. Sometimes when you're riding Kay's speeder, enemies start chasing you. You can ram them to the sides, but you can't shoot while driving unless you activate Kay's adrenaline rush or get off the speeder and fight on foot. It's a strange limitation that breaks the gameplay flow and quickly becomes frustrating. Oh hey, it's me from the future. So after I finished editing this video, Ubisoft released another patch and fixed this issue entirely. So now you can actually shoot while driving. Also, I forgot to mention this earlier, but the collision issue with the speeder where Kay would fall off after hitting even the smallest obstacles was completely fixed in previous updates. Riding it in the open world now feels much smoother and way more enjoyable than it did at launch. With that out of the way, let's get back to the rest of the video. However, if there's one thing that Star Wars Outlaws got completely right, it's the open world design. The game features multiple planets with familiar locations for Star Wars fans to visit. It also allows you to seamlessly travel to outer space using the Trailblazer. Now, we'll get into the space part shortly, but what really matters is the planets themselves. These worlds are undeniably gorgeous and are amongst some of the rare few modern open world games that actually feel alive. The cities are dense, bustling, and full of life. They feel lived in and do a great job at setting the tone and atmosphere. They also feature some side activities so you can spend some time doing optional stuff, or if you're up to it, explore them to find interesting new items, interact with vendors, and more. Other than the side missions found in each world, there are also factions that you can have different levels of reputation with. This reputation system can unlock doors to more quests, as well as provide some benefits with merchants and the ability to walk freely in a faction's outpost. But if it's negative, well, that's when you have to rely on stealth, and interestingly enough, if you get spotted during these sequences, you'll risk losing your reputation with a faction and have to work your way up with them again. But cities aren't the only explorable areas on planets, as there are larger, more open areas that you can explore on foot or on a speeder. Sadly, space exploration doesn't live up to the excitement of exploring the planets themselves. You can seamlessly fly from a planet into orbit, and there are occasional dogfights and lootable debris fields, but these segments feel shallow and undercooked. They lack meaningful discoveries, the playable area is often limited, and the uninspired design makes them the least engaging part of the experience. But another great thing about Outlaws is that you don't need to grind for XP or level up your character to access different areas in the open world. In fact, the world is not level based, and you can go almost anywhere and fight almost anyone without much hassle. As you progress through the story, you will unlock tools that let you access previously unreachable locations or deal with certain enemies more easily. But even then, you're never forced to deal with RPG-style level gating or bullet sponge enemies with damage numbers floating above their heads. Rather than farming XP, you unlock new skills by doing specific activities which encourage you to actually engage with the game's systems instead of just repeating busy work. That design choice helps merge gameplay systems with progression beautifully. And overall, Ubisoft's done an incredible job of capturing the Star Wars atmosphere in these stunning environments. Outlaws' story is a fun ride filled with lighthearted moments and plenty of references for Star Wars enthusiasts. But even if you're unfamiliar with the series lore, you can still enjoy the game easily as it explains everything you need to know. Just don't go in expecting a deep or unpredictable narrative. The story plays out like a straightforward cliché space heist, and honestly, that's not a bad thing, especially since it's not trying to rewrite the rulebook. As for our protagonist, while Kay Vess isn't the most layered character in gaming, she's absolutely charming. There's a likability to her that makes her journey enjoyable, especially thanks to her companion Nyx, an adorable creature who honestly steals more than a few scenes, no pun intended. One of the most interesting aspects of Kay's story is that she's not a Jedi, and that simple detail shifts the entire tone of the game. You're not some powerful force wielder, you're a rogue, a thief, someone scraping by. That outsider perspective gives the story a refreshing angle. But here's the catch. Just like the story, which feels flat and fairly surface level, there's not much depth to the characters or overarching plot either. And while that might disappoint some players, it doesn't derail the experience entirely, because where Outlaws succeeds is in how it tells its story. Despite giving players a good amount of freedom, including the option to tackle some chapters out of order, the narrative remains impressively coherent thanks to the story itself. It never feels disjointed, which is a rare achievement for a non-linear structure, and that consistency alone puts it ahead of many recent Ubisoft titles. Also, the character and facial animation in cutscenes are an interesting topic. Firstly, there are real-time and CGI cutscenes in the game, and both do things differently. The overall quality of character animations is actually fine, but unfortunately some of these real-time cutscenes suffer from facial animation quality. They're not as bad as some of the recent Assassin's Creed titles, but they're not good either. Now, since Outlaws is not an RPG, doesn't feature dialogue choices, and is not as packed with missions as some other open-world games, it's expected from this game with its premium price tag to feature higher quality cutscenes, but unfortunately it rarely delivers. Regardless, the multiple cutscene approach keeps the pacing fresh and gives the story a more cinematic feel, which really helps elevate key moments. Star Wars Outlaws is a good game. It's not a masterpiece or something you've never seen before, but it's a genuinely fun experience, and after all the polishing, it's actually worth giving a shot. Most of the game's issues have been resolved, and what's left is a fun adventure that I genuinely think is worth your time, especially if you've been waiting for an open world action game that doesn't drown you in RPG systems and lets you explore almost everything at your own pace. I just wish things were either complete from day one or fixed with one major patch instead of drip-feeding quality of life features that should have been there from the start. Still, it's a good thing they didn't abandon the game, but I don't think settling for the bare minimum is the way to go. Ubisoft really needs to stop releasing incomplete games at launch only to finish adding features later under the guise of live service support. I'm not criticizing the updates themselves, I'm criticizing the practice of releasing half-finished games and expecting praise for eventually completing what a full-price premium title should have included from the start. But I'm curious to hear what you think. Are you willing to give Outlaws a chance? And do you prefer single-player games that grow and evolve over time, or would you rather get a complete experience from day one? Let me know in the comments.